right. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Connor, welcome back as well.
Thank you. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing really well. And guys, thanks for joining us again as well. Look, today's episode, honestly, is going to be, it's a little bit of winging it, honestly. Like Connor and I, we don't really extensively plan out the podcast, to be fair, do we, Connor? I mean, we just
No.
start talking.
It's usually a phone call. Do you want to
Yeah,
have a chat for a while?
that's
And then it's
that's
like a yes, no. Yeah. They're the best ones. Scott, you've got to make sure it's authentic.
That's right.
Maybe Spotify will buy our podcast for $100 million,
Wow.
like they did the Joe Rogan podcast.
So does that mean the actual podcast he does won't be on YouTube anymore?
So he has taken it completely off YouTube.
Wow.
Completely. All content is going over to Spotify, and Spotify, apparently, which I didn't know and most people didn't know, have video. Now, I don't know if they're going to especially make it for, they've said they've got video, and I think they've especially made it for Joe Rogan because they've tactfully gone for the number one podcast in the world, not the number 10. They like cut the head off the snake straight up. They're like, hey, YouTube, we just took your best podcast, brought it over to Spotify. Now, the interesting thing is, Scott, for the traders out there, it went up 17.5% in 2 days.
I didn't. I don't monitor Spotify. I did. I dropped the ball because I don't trade it, but it's interesting,
Get up if you can, Spotify, the chart, like that's going up, and just look at the spike that's gone up this month. It's incredible.
See, this is great. We wing it. We get great content. Look at this. This is a good talking point,
Now, it's now 17.5%, Scotty, for the layman, is it went up a market cap of $5 billion in 48 hours just by Joe Rogan.
Because I noticed that, and his friend Tim Pool talked about it as well, and that, he was just talking speculation. Joe's obviously not actually talked about. I'm sure once he gets and does a podcast on Spotify, he'll talk about maybe, the issues. Because I know YouTube is not a free platform in regards to, like, freedom of speech. Like, they definitely do have people they like, and they really promote those people, and the people they don't like, they sort of go like, they do some shenanigans, honestly. So
yeah, the big tech thing's always a problem. It's always been a problem. It's been a problem for Joe because he gets a lot of his podcasts demonetized depending on who he has, and some of his guests are pretty moderate.
Yes.
Like, I don't really know, apart from Gavin McInnes maybe, which people could argue that's like as right-leaning as he's probably got in the past, and most people are kind of moderate.
Yeah.
So they worked out, like, from what I heard, and I haven't actually seen the stats, but they estimate that he makes about 30 grand an episode just from ads and different things on YouTube, and that like if he gets Elon Musk on, he can make up to about 100 grand. That's just speculation.
Wow.
That's from his ads, but he sold the podcast for 100 million. So I mean, that's cash money, and he said that he still has complete autonomy over his podcast. But if Spotify went up to the market cap of $5 billion and it stays around there and it doesn't just crash for being oversold, does that mean that Joe Rogan's content, him as a channel, him as a provider, he's worth $5 billion? Like, that's crazy.
It is.
Potentially he could be worth $5 billion.
That's true. Yeah, because I saw it, I didn't really realize the significance of it. But I mean, he's been doing it for 11 years apparently, as well. Yeah. So there's going to be 11 years. That's I actually have a membership to Spotify. I used it. I listened to a few interesting podcasts and stuff. It's not that expensive, but it is. Like, they might start poaching people that are a little especially like you said, because Joe has who he wants on, and sometimes, that disturbs the peace in, like San Francisco, like where the bubble is, the tech bubble is, and it's like people get a little sensitive, and I agree. So, interesting play. If you guys do play the US stocks, it's definitely one to watch you guys as some potential to grow, because they've done this and they're positioned now with the videos to do some some more growing potentially. Now also before we started recording, guys, Connor and I we were talking about the situation this week with Donald Trump, who both Connor and I don't really mind Donald Trump honestly as a human being. He's delivered and everything, but Connor, I mean, you were talking about the China situation. I mean, where did we leave off? We were talking about the Belt and Road.
Well, we to begin with, I said you can say what you want about him. He passes the pub test.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
you could have a beer with the guy. You probably would have a bit of a laugh if you put the politics aside. And then I said to you, I said, just through dumb luck, I said, on paper, his whole thing about the sentiment behind being a nationalist was the worst thing you can do economically. It should all be about globalism, free trade. He's like, no, bring the jobs back to America.
Yeah.
Through dumb luck, through coronavirus, that was one of the greatest things that he could have ever done. Try to get some infrastructure back into America, because then you don't have to rely on these global supply chains anymore.
Yeah, completely correct. Yeah.
And then we said China is now trying to control these global supply chains through one of the big things is the Belt and Roads Initiative, where that's all about controlling supply lines.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's subtly done under the guise of progress and helping the rest of the globe and helping Africa, but it's very valid. And you were talking about in Africa. I thought you made a very good point. How they would say, "Oh, we've got to protect these trade routes. We'll set up some military installations."
Yeah. So what the Chinese have done is they go into these third world countries, for the use of a better word, and say, "Oh, look, we'll get some infrastructure going on. We'll start to bring your trade right up and make your country prosperous."
Yeah.
And then once they start to do that, they say, "Well, we've got a lot of trade, and you've got a lot of trade coming to us, and back and forth, in and out. We've got to protect these trade routes. So how we're going to do that is we're going to send the military in to protect the trade routes." Now, it's all under the guy's stole the ruse. All they want is their military into those countries, and there's nothing they can do. And I wish I had the Economist. You've got me wrong. You've got me on the spot. It might have been John Adams who said there's two ways to take over a country: through the sword or through their debt.
That's the comment, really, guys. If you're watching this, thank you. That's something to really pay attention to, because it's we're not slandering anyone or anything like that, but it's just, if you open your eyes a little bit, there are things that are definitely happening that, and we touched upon. There's obviously a lot of tension right now with Hong Kong and China. Do you know the details of what policy was enacted this week? I wasn't too sure. It had something to do with, I wasn't really sure, but it really upset Hong Kong in regards to, it was to do with like, if you want to set up a business in Hong Kong, it's going to be like if you were in mainland China. So, for example, if you want to set up a bank in China or something, you're a foreign country or foreign company. So it's very challenging, and I think they're pressing Hong Kong to have, So
Hong Kong, Singapore, those countries, some of the easiest countries in the world to start up a business.
Yeah.
It's a very capitalist society, and then like you could literally set up a business within a day. Like, I'm not even joking. Now in China, mainland China, you're not allowed. Foreign ownership is not allowed to be any more than 49%.
Yeah.
So now I don't really know the ins and outs of because it's, what did they say the Hong Kong experiment was? It's like one country, two systems, two different systems.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was you come there, you can start up a business, you get your property rights, because at the end of the day, if you have property rights in Hong Kong, supposedly it's capitalist.
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want about China. They're communist. It's a communist country.
Yeah. That's right.
That's what it is. And with communism, there can't be capital. You can't own property through communism.
Yeah.
You can't be half pregnant.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
can't you can't be half pregnant. You can't own your property because sooner or later, and that you see this, the government come in and start to control capital in
Mm.
China. I mean, the same thing is going to happen in Hong Kong. You're going to get that the big business people are going to leave, which
Yeah.
means capital flight. They bring their capital with them.
Mm. Yeah.
So, and also too, I mean, where people don't understand, the most powerful thing to leave a country is human capital,
Yep.
is knowledge people take out of the country. So I'm sure the best of the best will leave. They probably won't want to be there. The best of the best normally don't play by the rules anyway, Scotty. So they'll just head off. They don't
Yeah.
want to be in there when everyone's looking through, when when the Chinese Communist Party starts looking through the books.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They'll be like, well, that's true. Yeah, they'll move to the most opportunistic spot for them, and where they can. There's less red tape, and like you said, it's just business really. So now, kind of just, I know you kind of doesn't have the charts in front of everyone, but I just kind of, what are your thoughts on, you didn't take any trades this week? Are you sort
No.
of, do you have any thoughts on trade ideas, or not really right now?
No,
You're pretty.
I've started to see. So I like to trade, as you know, the daily and the 4 hourly.
Yeah.
I've seen on the daily on the 4 hourly, sorry, some of the pairs are starting to get some good trend lines going
Yep.
on.
Yep.
So I'll just wait to see if they continue any further.
Yeah.
Like my trend lines have to have, like, there's some specifics about it, right? Like,
Mm.
for it to be a trend line, for those who don't know, the definition is 3 touches.
Yep.
So I like to at least see 4 touches, because by and large, Scott, I'm not sure if you have a trend line in front of you. If it doesn't have 4 touches, and I don't want to get right into specifics of a trend line without seeing them, but unless it's got like 4 good touches on it, that's when the trend line starts to get quite long anyway.
Yep.
So once there's a 4 decent, and when I mean a touch, the touches shouldn't be right next to each other.
Yep. Yep.
But if there's 4 separate touches with a bit of distance between them, I'm looking for something like that, and then I might take either an up, or hopefully, if it breaks through the trend line. If it breaks through the trend line, then I might take a reversal trade.
Now, as you were describing it, I had the Euro Aussie dollar chart that you took earlier in the month, and I had that perfectly outlined as you were explaining it, guys. So if you heard what kind of said, that's what we're talking about. Sometimes in the market, there's not much going on really in the high time frame. So what that means is, there just won't be any trading, and a lot of people don't quite appreciate that. I get people reaching out to me and whatnot, and that's perplexing. But trust me, like, the best traders, some of them will just sit on their hands and be like, they just wait and are going to have to be patient. So, and we might see that because, as Connor's mentioned, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. There's a lot of tensions, and people are just sort of waiting to see what happens. I mean, the S&P 500 ended okay, but we'll see. There's a lot going on in the background that we're probably not privileged to. That I think, yeah.
I heard, and this may be just to end on this. I heard to do with the barley exports, the 80%, how they put a tariff on an 80%, because Australia. We're talking about America. We're talking about Australia and China. Sorry, China put 80% tariffs on barley. Now the rumor around the water cooler is this all comes down to the trade agreement that the US and China had signed. Remember, they actually finally agreed on trade, and then coronavirus happened, and they've sort of ripped that up.
Yeah.
But apparently, China had agreed to buy a lot of American barley.
I see.
So this was just an excuse, because for those who don't or do know, that there's been a lot of saber rattling in Australia, between Australia and China. Not really saber rattling, but Australia asked for an independent investigation into coronavirus in China. And China said, well, we're just going to stop the trade going on between Australia and China. How about that? And then they slapped an 80% tariff on barley. That was just an excuse, because they'd already signed this trade deal. Now, Like I said, I haven't done any research on that, but that kind of makes sense.
It does, and it's
What I
yes.
tinfoil hats on, be conspiracy
I
theorists.
agree. Let's end on that. And look, guys, we had some pretty good reception to the educational stuff as well. And Connor's obviously got a video that's very popular. So we are working on, maybe tentatively we could say a backtesting thing on some trendline stuff or something. Because we are looking to help the community, guys. But time on that will be determined. I just literally brought that up just then. But Connor, thanks for that as well. And look, guys, as always, please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, LinkedIn, on YouTube in the comments section. And Connor, thanks again for joining us as well.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you later.
All right. See you guys. Thanks for watching.